Dana Stevens has had a long career writing features and television. Her most recent film, The Woman King, starring Viola Davis, premiered in 2022 to wide acclaim. Other films include Fatherhood, starring Kevin Hart, Safe Haven, City of Angels, and For the Love of the Game, starring Kevin Costner. She also created and produced Reckless, a legal drama for CBS, and What About Brian, an ABC series itself. Current projects in development include the romance 28 Summers, an original erotic thriller, The Pink House, and a biographical film about singer Carly Simon. Dana, welcome to this podcast. It's nice to talk with you.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Well, there are a couple questions I want to ask before we get started. Everyone will want me to ask this. When they hear that you're working on a biographical film about Carly Simon, they will all want to know, and would criticize me severely if I did not ask, do you know who she is talking about in the song You're So Vain?
Well, actually in the script currently, that's kind of a running motif because that is the thing that everybody always asks Carly. And all I can say is Carly has informed me that it's about more than one person, that each verse is about a different person, but she has not yet revealed to me and may not ever reveal who it is actually about, because I think maintaining the mystery is more fun than telling people.
Yeah. What about the romance 28 Summers? Where does that title come from?
That's actually based on a book by a very successful romance writer named Elin Hilderbrand. All of Ellen's books take place on Nantucket Island, and she has a huge fan base. I actually feel like I've hit the three of the best-selling authors in the last 10 years. I've adapted The Nightingale, which is by Kristen Hanna, and then my movie Safe Haven is by Nicholas Sparks. But anyway, 28 Summers is a kind of modern take on a Same Time Next Year story. I don't know if you remember Same Time Next Year, but it was
yes,
two people that would get together.
Alan Alda. Yeah.
Right, with Alan Alda and Ellen Burstyn. And so this is a different tale, more modern, but it's about two people that have a romantic weekend every year for 28 summers.
I've seen Same Time Next Year 2 or 3 times at least.
Yeah.
And final question on that, the Pink House. The only thing I know about the title, the Pink House, there's a restaurant in Savannah that goes by that name.
Really? I'll have to go eat there.
Oh, it's really good. It's really a great restaurant. They have the bottom of it has a bar. It used to be a bank. In the bottom basement of the restaurant is really well done, but it's called the Pink House.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I guess that's not related to your
our Pink House. This is also something. It's based on a short story that I personally optioned called The Pink House by Rebecca Curtis. It was in the New Yorker, and I would like to direct this. I would like to direct both 28 Summers and The Pink House. So The Pink House is more of a kind of an indie film, I would say, and the 28 Summers is more of a commercial film.
Okay. Let me ask you, how did you come to be a screenwriter? How did you start?
Well, I went to UCLA. I was in the theater program there. I got a degree in theater arts, and I had intended to be an actress, and I did pretty well in college. But one of the things that we had to take at that time in undergrad, which was quite unusual, I don't think they even have this requirement anymore, but you had to take playwriting. And I wrote 2 plays at school that were produced, and it was such a great feeling to see your writing performed by actors and to be a part of that experience. And when I got out of school, I tried to be an actor, which is pretty hard, pretty hard on the self-esteem. And in the meantime, I was dating a pretty successful screenwriter, and I started thinking, well, I should try this. I also had a job reading screenplays for $50 a script, where I would write like a book report so that the executives wouldn't have to read it themselves. So I just really started thinking, I can do this. I can write a movie. And then slowly the writing door became open to me, as the acting doors never did. And I just decided that I would go through the open door, is something I often say. And I went forward as a writer, and I've never regretted it. I really get more pleasure probably out of writing than I ever did out of acting.
Let me jump ahead and ask you a question right there that I was going to ask you at the end. And that is, what is the emotional reward that you get from seeing a screenplay of yours hit the movie screen?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, it's definitely a great feeling to see your name come up. Like on The Woman King, my credit is the second credit after the director, and it's all by itself there. And it feels like a great accomplishment, because movies last forever. That movie will always be there. Right now it's on Netflix, and it feels good. The other things that I really find pleasing is when my words help the actors achieve the emotion that they're trying to achieve. I love that feeling. I feel like that's one of the things I do well, and I'm known for, is writing a role that an actor wants to play and can play well, because he or she has the words to get the emotion going. So I'm very pleased about that. And finally, it's great fun to be in the theater, and if people laugh, at something, it just feels great when they all laugh.
So it's a lot more fun to write, or just as much fun to you to write as to have been an actor.
Yes.
Okay. How long did it take you to break into the writing business? In other words, how did you start?
Well, in those days, the late 80s, early 90s, it was a time when Hollywood was a lot more excited about developing projects and also buying original product. Now Hollywood is obsessed with what we call IP, intellectual property. So everything they do is like, it's already got an audience. It's a book, it's a YouTube series, or it's a reboot of an old thing. They feel like that gives them more coverage to make sure that it will be successful. But in the time that I came up, it was a time when people wrote spec scripts and sold them. Like I went to school with Shane Black, who wrote Lethal Weapon, and he wrote it in the garage, of this house he was living with other guys that we all knew in college. And then he sold it for $500,000. And then, of course, continued on to have a great writing career. So I tried to write spec scripts like people did. And I wrote one that got what we call optioned. So I got paid like Writers Guild minimum to keep working on it, but it never got made. So then I wrote another one that got more notice, but I never got paid a dime for it, because people really liked it, but they never, paid me anything or made it. So I was 2 scripts in. That was maybe 2 years, I would say. And then I actually got an acting job in a pilot. When you do a TV series, they usually make a pilot, and that's a good little chunk of money for an actor if they make a pilot, even though there's no guarantee that pilot will ever be seen, and mine never was. But I had this dough, and I said to myself, I have to write a screenplay before this money runs out that's going to change my fortunes. And I wrote this movie called Blink, which was a spec script, meaning on speculation, like I wrote it without being paid. And And that was my first movie.
What was Blink about?
Blink is a woman in jeopardy thriller. At that time, they were very popular. I don't know if you remember, like Ashley Judd was in all these movies, Kiss the
Yes.
Girls, and, there Jennifer Lopez and Madeline Stowe, all these different people. And mine was it starred Madeline Stowe and Aidan Quinn, and it was about a woman who gets her sight back after having been blind for most of her life. And then she witnesses a murder. But she can't understand what she's witnessing, and it sort of goes from there.
Did you think up that idea on your own?
I did. I started doing research about people that get their sight back, and it was very fascinating to see that it wasn't always so great because it was hard for them to function and learn to see.
Did you ever have to deal with rejection, either as an actor or as a writer?
Well, both. I mean, I dealt with a lot of rejection as an actor, and I think it's fair to say that might be why I wasn't too heartbroken when I left it behind. It became very emotional for me when I wouldn't get a part. I felt, because when you're an actor, your instrument is your whole body and your person. If people reject you, you think you feel quite devastated that that people don't like you or something, of that ilk. You don't have what it takes, whatever. And when I later on as a writer, when I started to be able to be in the room watching people audition, there would be people that would audition that were fantastic, but I knew they weren't going to get the part. And I wanted to run outside and say, hey, listen, don't be upset when you don't get this part because you're great. Because it's not about how good you are as an actor often. It's just about whether you're right for the part, whether you have this essence, especially on camera. You can't really fake the essence of something, of what the person that you're looking for has in their core. So, and then even as a writer, I mean, I've had days, even in the last, 5 or 10 years where I've cried because I was working on a project and they decided to hire a different writer to keep going with it. So it's hard to lose a job, to get fired or get rejected, but I think it's important, that everyone, learn how to do that and how to bounce back from it.
For the love of the game, you weren't the first writer on that story, were you? Or were you
I was not there. I was the last writer on it. There was another writer before me who attempted to adapt it. It's an unfinished novel by Michael Shara. And so in that regard, it was the happy ending in that I was the last writer and my script was the one that got made. And I was able to get what we call sole credit on that movie.
In your house in California where you live, is there any room or place where you've got a manuscript, maybe more than one, that you think was just terrific, just wonderful, but it never got made into a movie? Do you have any of those?
Boxes? I've got boxes of scripts that have never been made into movies that I think are good. They smell a little moldy now, but I definitely have a few. Some of them, in retrospect, I see the point why they didn't get made. But there's 2 I know for sure that I think, boy, these would have been great.
I remember reading one time when John Grisham was getting started as a novelist, his first book, A Time to Kill, nobody bought it. And he put it as doorstops in his house. It's supposed to be a true story until he wrote The Firm, and then it came back and reissued it, and it did well.
Right.
They made a movie out of it.
Right.
I remember reading in some article interview you gave for a magazine in Charleston, South Carolina, which is where you did the TV pilot or the series Reckless. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we shot 13 episodes in Charleston.
Why did you pick Charleston?
Well, one thing that's fun about one of my favorite things about writing is imagining, writing about places where I don't live, because it's fun to fulfill the fantasy of living in these places. And my boyfriend, who is a lawyer in North Carolina, Scott Davis, he took me to Charleston for the first time. I think that people that grow up on the West Coast, kind of San Francisco is their Charleston. It's very historic and beautiful, and you feel like you're seeing an older city. But I had never been to Charleston or thought about going to Charleston. And when we went there, Scott's sister lives there. I just completely fell in love with it. And our show was one of the first dramatic series to shoot there. I decided to come up with a story that we could shoot in Charleston because I wanted to shoot there. And we were able to get ordered by CBS. And so we transformed this old dog food warehouse into a studio. And it's still there, and they still shoot things there. And there are a lot of shows being shot in Charleston now. And I would like to work there again.
Did Scott get anything in your series for doing this, taking you to Charleston and introducing you to Charleston?
He has a little part in the pilot. He plays the bailiff. But he enjoyed it. He had a great time being a part of the show. And he's certainly a big helper to me when I'm coming up with ideas. He's, and that show was about lawyers. He's the city attorney of New Bern, and that show was about the city attorney of Charleston.
You know that the film For Love of the Game has a romantic plot to it, and 28 Summers apparently has a romantic plot to it. Are you drawn to that sort of script?
Yes, 100%. I think I'm known as being a romance writer to people in the town, and I love romantic movies. I think you probably saw in one of the articles I wrote for the Academy newsletter that The Way We Were is my favorite film. I have a big, huge poster of it here, the Italian poster of The Way We Were. Yeah, I am almost always going to put a love story into my scripts. And even in The Woman King, the love story is between the mother and daughter, but it functions structurally a lot like a love story. They meet each other. They don't like each other at first, but they're drawn to each other. And then they, end up having a very deep relationship.
I remember talking the other day with you, and you made the comment that people should look at movies and realize that about 20 or 25 minutes into the movie, how something happens, and you go in a different direction, or the movie takes off, or something like that. Is that true?
Yeah, I think if you are thinking about writing a screenplay, you would want to educate yourself a little bit with there's some books out there like Screenwriting by Sid Field, or I can't remember the author, but there's a book called How to Write a Screenplay in 21 Days. But every time you are working on a script for Hollywood, if you have bosses who've, hired you, like that's mostly what happens in my career now, is I get hired to adapt a book, or they want to make a movie about the Agoge. So I go and pitch my idea of what I would do with a movie about the Agoge. And then that's how I get a job. They want to know about the 3-act structure. That's what we call it. And even though you might want to pull away from it, you might want to try something different, you'll find that a movie does have a 3-act structure. It has a setup of 25 minutes where you meet the characters and you understand what they care about. And then around page 25 or 30, something big happens to catapult them in to the action of the movie, the story, the thing they have to solve, the thing they have to get away from. And then the second act is the longest part of the movie, from say 25 to 80, where they are, uncovering, the mystery, or they're finding out, they're in danger. And then there's another big thing that happens on page 75, 80, 85, that then is catapulting us into the final act, the third act, which is mostly like how everything, the big chase, how everything irons itself out, and then the movie's over. And that all happens in a roughly 2-hour time span.
With that thought in mind, I want to pivot just a bit and talk about something that we have talked about over the last 2-3 days. And that is that the name of this podcast is Grit, Stories of Resilience. And you sent to me, I think I saw it even early this morning in an email note from you. You pared down to about a paragraph what Scott had written in a couple of pages. And I want to thank you for that. And that is something called the hero's journey. What is the hero's journey?
Well, I should say that, Joseph Campbell, the writer Joseph Campbell, who writes about mythology, and he's sort of the father of this idea of the hero's journey. And the way he defines it is, number one, the hero is forced out of their comfort zone, or it takes a journey. It embarks upon a journey away from their home, out of their comfort zone. And then the second part of the hero's journey is that they have to face challenges. They fail, they succeed, they, learn deep things about themselves that they have to face. And then the third part of the hero's journey is they conquer the obstacle and they return home, and they are more knowledgeable about themselves and more powerful.
They've been transformed to some degree, I guess.
Yes, transformation. Yeah.
Do you see this theory or this idea in movies?
Yes, I mean it's you could almost take that formula and look at every movie. I mean, one of the most famous ones is Star Wars, the first Star Wars movie, Luke Skywalker. It's classic hero's journey. Luke Skywalker lives on Tatooine in the desert. Please don't at me if it isn't Tatooine. I get them wrong sometimes. He gets taken, on this adventure that he's never seen before. But I mean, almost all movies, you mentioned The Shawshank Redemption, which people love, that is a hero's journey. It's, and even your own life, like you, Jim, have had a hero's journey in your life. I think you could quite easily pick that out, and you also, in a way, have had a 3-act structure to your life.
Hero is not the word that comes to mind in my journey.
Hero just means that you're the lead. You're the lead character.
There you go.
In the Pink House, if we ever make that movie, we're going to have what we call the hero house, which is the Pink House. That is so hero really just means the lead character.
Okay. Have any of your movies, what would be one of your movies, or a couple of them, that you think has that theme in it, the hero's journey?
Well, certainly The Woman King is a classic, hero myth for both Nawi, the young woman character who lives in a family where she's been sort of adopted in, and they basically make her work as it's almost a Cinderella type story. They make her work taking care of the children, and she lives this life of, agrarian, and then she gets, right around page 25, she gets given by her father to the Agoji women, and she gets into the castle where the Agoji women live, and she starts training to be a warrior. But there's also a huge hero's journey for Viola Davis's character, Naniska, because Naniska, as you meet her, has this psychological deep wound that has had her feel that she has to cut off her emotions. In order to be a warrior, you must have no emotions. You must kill your tears, she says. And her journey is to reconnect with her emotions, that her relationship with Nawi helps her reconnect with her emotions and who she really is. And she realizes that her emotional self is actually part of what could make her an even stronger warrior. So that's her journey. And then, they all have that, really. For Love of the Game, that might be a little bit of a different one because he seems like he's already a hero. But once again, he has this 9 innings of baseball that he pitches in the course of the movie. He pitches a perfect game. And during the time that he's doing that, he's remembering some failures he's had in his life that have to do with the love and relationships. So, you know, I would say those two definitely. Also, City of Angels, you know, the hero is the angel, Nick Cage, and how he decides that he wants to become human. So he, you know, enters a different world and then has to face loss. And sort of the moral of that movie is how even if you face the hardest loss and failure that you could ever face, he says in the end of the movie, I would still rather be human and feel these things I feel than not be human.
When do you, and I haven't asked you this before, when do you think in your own life and career the 25-minute clip happened?
That's a good question. Oh gosh, when did the 25-minute thing hit? Well, I think it probably hit around the time that I got this pilot and I got what I thought I wanted, and it wasn't very satisfying. And I decided I have to change here. This is my moment to shift course.
Okay. Failure and challenges is part of that. I take it that you overcome and get better and stronger. That's part of it. I take it.
Yeah, like I've had a pretty good career, and then there came a time in the early aughts, you know, I would say that I had a young child, and I kind of what I would say lost it. You know, I wasn't having a lot of success, and I decided I'm kind of not knowing I haven't developed, you know, I'm leaning back on my old tropes. And so I had to kind of relearn, you know, and I think you have to do that throughout your life. I went out and I asked everybody I knew, send me the greatest scripts you've read in the last couple of years. And I read them, and I started trying to see what are people wanting now in their stories that they didn't want in the 90s, you know.
Speaking of your son, the apple did not fall far from the tree, did it? In terms of what he wants to do in his career.
Yeah. He wants to be a writer. He just graduated from NYU, and he wants to be a writer, and he's a good writer. So I hope he's able to have success. But there's, you know, in the entertainment business, it's quite hard to have a long career. And, you know, as you probably know, we're on strike right now, the writers. So that's
what does the writer's strike have to do? Is it worse for movies or television? How does that work?
The strike is, you know, I think most writers would agree with me that the strike is mostly about television because of the streaming services. You know, I think anybody out there listening can see that television has changed drastically. You know, we used to have 3 networks. They did shows that were 22 episodes a season. So if you got a job on a show, you were going to be working that whole year, and you have to work a certain amount to get money put into your pension and health plan. So if you don't work that much, then you don't qualify. The union is everything to us. You know, it takes care of our health care and our pension, but we have to fulfill certain work, you know, requirements to get those things. And what's happened is on the shows that you're watching on Netflix and Amazon, they're 10 episodes or 6 episodes or 13. That's not a whole year's worth of work. And yet you're working, you're committed to that show. Like they have you make 13 episodes and they have a hold on you, you know, because maybe they're going to pick it back up. But the other thing these streamers do is they wait like a year or 2 years to pick something up. So it's a lot of really, you know, what we call middle-class writers that aren't able to make ends meet, and that's why we're striking.
How have you managed? You've been a writer now for over 30 years. How have you managed to keep your passion, interest, or your level of writing interest at the top of the game for all that time?
Well, one thing I do is I try not to do the same thing. I think if you look at the 7 movies that I've had made, they're quite different in their genre. And, you know, a lot of people would be like, The Woman King, that's, you know, an action movie, you know, why did you want to write that? But I really wanted to write it. I love Game of Thrones. I wanted to create this world that people had never seen, they'd never been to. And now, you know, and with 28 Summers, I've returned back to sort of what I originally started at. And I would say that a few years ago, I thought, I'll never write another movie like that. I'll never write just a straight up romance, because I guess I wasn't interested in that for a while. But now I am having the best time returning to that early love, you know?
Where do you write? Do you write from your home or to write?
Yes.
Do
Although
you-
when I was a mom, I rented an office. I'm still a mom, sorry, but when I
Right,
was
right,
had a young child, I went out and rented an office because I couldn't concentrate at home. But
right.
now I'm back working at home.
Do you write primarily by yourself or in collaboration with other people? How do you do that? Is it a solitary existence being a
It's
screenwriter?
very solitary. TV is not. TV is really fun. It's like going to camp. You have a writer's room of, you know, 6 to 10 writers, and you all, you know, come up with a show together, and it's really great. And some people write with a partner, but I don't. I've always written by myself, although I do have great collaborations with the director when they come on board, with producers that are creative. You know, I'll be working by myself for a few months, and then I'll give the finished product to the producer, and that's the first person that I will collaborate with. And then eventually, or maybe we already have a director, or maybe the next thing we do is we get a director. Then I collaborate with them. Excuse me. Then I collaborate with the actors. So there is collaboration, but it is very lonely too. I didn't find the pandemic that hard because that's kind of my life.
Okay. Interesting. That's interesting. How do you decide what to write? Like, I know you got 3 projects going on now. After they're done, do you keep a batch at one time, or do you go all through all 3 before you start over? How does that work?
Well, the truth is that there's lots of things you write that never get made. And I don't want to just write things that never get made. I want things to get made and to see them through to so people can watch them. And so, number one, I try to make choices of things that I think that will get made. And so, and then number two, I need to have plates spinning at all times. Because like a movie, like I worked on The Woman King for 2 years before we even had a director. So then after we have the director, the pandemic comes, you know, and you're waiting for that before you can make the movie. You know, it just takes a long time. So I need to always have things that I'm working on that are in various states of flux. And what's happened recently is New Woman King is finished, you know, so now I have a slot available to slot something new back in. And then I also have goals. I want to direct a movie, and I want to do TV again. So I have a few things that are sort of that I'm hoping will happen after the strike, that are TV things. Some of them are based on books, and some of them are original ideas.
As you look back, what do you this is a hard question, I suppose. What do you think you would say that you are most proud of in your career as a screenwriter?
Well, I'm very proud of writing things that move people, that a lot of people, you know, cry in my movie that after when they see the movies, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of writing a lot of different things that can appeal to a lot of different people, and different people of different races. Writing stories that show you the life experience of different people of different races. And I I guess I'm proud that I've written movies that I think are humanistic, that are movies that talk about humans at their best self, and not movies that feel like they contribute to people hating on each other, you know.
That's all very good. You should put that answer down in a bio that you want to give to people, I think. If you had it all to do over again, if you were 25 years old again, or at whatever age you were when you started graduating from UCLA, would you do it again? Is it
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, 100%.
good for you? I asked that
You
question.
think do you think you would do it again, Jim?
No, I probably, if I were 25 years old again, I think I would do something different. I don't know what.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what. I love being a trial lawyer, as I've told you. In the office, not so much. I did enjoy that. My favorite thing in being a trial lawyer is I love to cross-examine people on the witness stand. And I loved it most when they had said something that was not correct or true. Because it was the chase, you know,
Yeah.
was what was so much fun to me. I didn't necessarily want to get them. I just wanted to chase, you know. And so,
Well, it's interesting because it's about what you do is, as a trial lawyer, is you're writing the dialogue in your head. You're thinking, I'm going to ask this, and he's going to say that, and I'm going to ask this. Is that how it works?
it's by the seat of your pants more than you wish, more than you know. You can have the best plan in the world, and most everything written out. Because I think I told you before we started today, my first trial where I had it all written out, and the witness didn't follow my script. I didn't deviate from the script. Finally, the judge called my co-counsel to the bench and said, "Jim doesn't seem to know what he's doing." And he said, "Judge, he doesn't. Can you help us?" And you know, he said, "Yeah, just tell him to ask the questions this way. What happened next?" So I learned then that what you want to do and what you want to do, I guess, as a screenwriter and what you want to do as a trial lawyer are the same. You want to tell a story,
Ah,
and
so true.
whoever tells the best story most often wins. Is
Well,
what I
that
learned.
is so great. You know, that is and it makes me think about how much storytelling is part of our human DNA and how it matters so much to us. The reason people like law shows, by the way, is because of that. You know, there's a mystery, there's a story that has to be told. It probably has a surprise in it. But I remember in my youth, I often felt like, oh, I'm not doing anything important. Like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not helping people. You know, I'm just, you know, in the entertainment business. But it was during the pandemic that I realized this is so much, this is a good thing that we're doing for people, telling people stories. And during the pandemic, people just gobbled up stuff like the Queen's Gambit. You know, they were home alone and home with their families, and they wanted to get lost in stories, to get through the time that we were, you know, living through, which was pretty tough. And I feel really good now about being a storyteller, and I hope to continue to be.
Good for you. There was a judge once that I knew who always finished when he was helping to select juries, asked the question of each juror, "Is there anything that I have not asked you that you think I should know? Or is there anything you want to say to me that you haven't said?" I always thought it was a great question.
That is a good question. But in the context of the jury pool, that's your opportunity to try to say something to get out of being on the jury, right?
That's probably true. That's probably true. But since the jury is all, we've already had the case here this afternoon. So is there anything I have not asked you this afternoon that I should have asked you or that you would want to say about being a screenwriter?
Hmm. I don't know. I think you've asked pretty good questions, which is your profession. So I'm not surprised at that. I would just say to people, I guess what I would want to say to people just in this current moment is go and see movies that you think you don't need to see or want to see. I have never been I have often felt like I don't want to see that movie. And then I go see it and it's like, wow, this movie blew my mind. I think it's really important to take in different points of view, different ways of telling stories. And I think you'll find it very enjoyable to sort of challenge yourself. I know that one of your favorite scenes in a movie that I wrote in For Love of the Game is when they're on their first date and they're making jokes about how hard it is to get to know people. And he says, she says something like, wouldn't it be great if we walked around with signs on our head that sort of let you know what we were all about? And he says, well, what would your sign say? And she takes a napkin and she writes a word on it and she holds it up to her forehead and it says, yes. And then he says, check, please. So I know you like that.
It's my favorite line. It's my favorite. Actually, that before I even knew you existed, I was in a seminar in Newbern, and Scott, your boyfriend, was there, sitting at the other end of the table. And I tell this story from when I was a waiter at 42nd Street. I had this couple there one night who was probably in their mid to late 30s or early 40s. It looked like it was their first date. So I told them the story that you have just said here on For the Love of the Game. I quoted some of that. And the lady, I've always remembered the lady said, can you get me a sheet of paper and a pencil? And that was a cool moment for me there. And Scott at the end of the table says, my girlfriend wrote that scene. And I didn't believe him. I said, get out of here. And it's true. And everything that's gone since has been because of that one movie I saw, and that one scene is how we come here to be here.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? But I do think that just saying yes when you want to say no or think you want to say no is a great way to live life, honestly.
That's a good thing. And I can't beat that for ending this afternoon. It's been a real privilege to have you on, and thank you so much. This has been really great.
Thank you, Jim. You might have to repay the favor. I might be calling you for, advice on law plots. So
I'm there, Chief. I'm there.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Take care.